Karen stormed up to my wife's car, waving a clipboard and shouting that it would be towed in minutes. Within seconds, a tow truck pulled up and the driver started checking the VIN. But when his eyes hit the record, he froze. Karen had no idea the car didn't belong to just anyone. Karen was already in our driveway when my wife, Sarah, stepped outside with a canvas tote and a reusable coffee cup. Karen stood by the hood of Sarah's silver sedan, HOA binder hugged to her chest like the Constitution. "Move this car," she snapped. "You can't park here overnight." Sarah blinked. "It's our driveway. Half the bumper crosses the sidewalk." Karen tapped a page protector covering a printout with a fluorescent post-it that read violation. Section 8.2. Accessibility. Sidewalks must remain clear at all times. I've documented the infraction. I was on the porch tying my sneakers. I headed down the steps. "Morning, Karen. We'll adjust the parking, no problem." "That's not sufficient," she said. "The tow truck is already on its way." Sarah's hand tightened on the cup. "You called a tow truck for our car?" "For the neighborhood's safety." Karen angled her phone, snapping photos. The bumper, the curb, the house number. "Children bike here. Wheelchairs need passage. You can't just do whatever you want." "It's 6 inches, Sarah said. "We'll back it up." Karen smiled with no warmth. "You can discuss it with the driver when he arrives." Across the street, Mr. Patel paused with his recycling bin. He gave me a small, apologetic shrug as if to say, "This again." We'd lived here 3 years and learned the rhythm. Karen patrolling, the HOA board nodding along, everyone else hoping to avoid the blast radius. I took a breath. Karen calling a tow without warning seems extreme. We haven't even had breakfast. "Warnings were issued," she said crisply. 2 emails this month. 1 door hanger last week. And please don't raise your voice. I'm recording for documentation. Sarah set her coffee on the hood. "I'm not trying to be difficult. Last night we got home late from urgent care. Our son had a fever." I parked fast. Karen's expression didn't waver. "I'm sorry for your personal situation, but this is a community. Rules prevent chaos. Rules also allow compassion," I said. "Compassion is not a policy." She flicked her eyes to the street. "And it won't stop a stroller from rolling into the road when you block the sidewalk." "Nothing rolled," Sarah said. "No one walks this stretch before 8. Karen lifted a finger. "Intent is irrelevant. Compliance is required." The binder thumped as she opened it. Inside were tabs. Landscaping, paint, vehicles, noise. She slid out a pre-filled fine form. "Here's the citation for today. The tow will proceed regardless. Can you at least wait while I move it?" I asked. "You may not obstruct the tow process," she recited. "Interference creates liability for the association." A screen door creaked open down the block. 2 teenagers stepped out with skateboards and froze when Karen turned her head. Sarah reached for the keys in her pocket. "I'll back up 6 inches right now." Karen's palm flashed in front of her. "Don't touch the vehicle. It's under enforcement." "That's not a thing," I said. "You don't have authority to lock us out of our own car." "I have a recorded violation," Karen said, phone still up. "The board empowered me to enforce accessible right-of-way provisions after the Turner family complained about stroller access." Mrs. Turner, walking past with a toddler, winced. "We didn't mean towings," she murmured. "Just the delivery trucks keep blocking corners." Karen ignored her. "This has gone on long enough. Last month the corner of your rear tire grazed the red paint near the hydrant." "It didn't," Sarah said. "I have photographs." "You take photographs of our tire?" I asked. "For safety." Our son Ethan pressed his face to the front window. He waved. Sarah waved back, her smile thin. "Look," I said, keeping my voice even. "You know we're reasonable. We shovel neighbors' driveways. We hosted the barbecue. Why escalate?" Karen's gaze softened for a heartbeat, then shuddered. "It's never personal. I submit reports the same way for everyone. Fairness means consistency." "Consistency also means proportionality," Sarah said. Karen inhaled. "If you disagree, bring it to the next board meeting." "When is it?" I asked. She closed the binder. "Last night." "Convenient." Sprinklers hissed alive. Birds chirped like this conversation wasn't happening. Sarah glanced down the street. "Is the tow really coming?" "Yes," Karen said. "Wilson's towing. They're punctual." As if on cue, a distant rumble trembled the air. It could have been a garbage truck, but the way Karen's mouth tilted told me she recognized the note. "I'm going to move the car," Sarah said, stepping toward the driver's door. Karen planted herself between Sarah and the handle. "Do not touch it." "Karen," I said. "Documenting interference," she replied, phone an inch from Sarah's shoulder. "Any attempt to move the car now can be construed as non-compliance once a contractor is en route." "That's absurd," Sarah said. "You can't freeze our car in place with a phone." I raised my hands. "Okay. Everyone breathe. Karen, what outcome are you after?" "Order," she said. "Predictable sidewalks. Clear sight lines. Neighbors who respect the rules we all agreed to." "We never agreed to towing first," I said. "You agreed to abide by enforcement protocols." She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear with the hand holding the binder, never dropping the phone's gaze. "You can appeal the fine later." Mr. Patel rolled his bin to the curb and approached. "Maybe give them 5 minutes, Karen?" Encouraging non-compliance is not helpful. He stepped back. "Just a suggestion." The rumble grew louder. Sarah's jaw set. "I'm not letting a stranger drag our car away while our kid watches from the window." "You won't have a choice," Karen said. "That's what enforcement means." I felt heat build behind my eyes, the kind that turns decent people into shouty versions of themselves. Enforcement also has limits. Karen glanced at the corner. "We're about to find out." Headlights turned onto our street, glare cutting through the early sun. A white truck rolled in, chrome glinting, orange beacons beginning to spin. "No." The tow truck rumbled to a stop in front of our driveway, its brakes squealing. Orange beacons flickered across the houses like an unwanted spotlight. Neighbors edged closer to their porches. A few pulled out phones, sensing drama worth recording. Karen straightened her cardigan, binders snug under her arm. "Perfect timing," she said to the driver as he stepped down. "That's the vehicle in violation." The man was in his late 40s, stocky, with grease-stained hands and a neon vest. His name patch read Rick. He glanced from Karen to us. "Morning. Got a call for a sidewalk obstruction?" "That's right," Karen said, thrusting the citation toward him. "Clear-cut violation. Needs to be removed." Rick scratched his beard. "Usually we tow for hydrants, fire lanes, abandoned cars. Sidewalk obstructions? Unusual." "It's in our community bylaws," Karen pressed. "I've documented it thoroughly. See?" She flipped open her binder, thrusting photos under his nose. "The bumper protrudes exactly 7 inches. Sarah folded her arms. 6 inches and I was backing in after midnight with a sick kid. We were going to fix it this morning." Rick looked at her, then at me. "You folks the owners?" "Yes," I said. "This is our driveway. We can move it right now." Karen barked a laugh. "They can't interfere once enforcement begins." Rick raised an eyebrow. "Lady, I'm not law enforcement. I'm a contractor. I don't need drama, just clarity. Who signed off on this?" "I did," Karen said quickly. "On behalf of the HOA board." "Got paperwork?" he asked. She shoved the citation toward him again. "This is more than enough." Rick glanced at me. "You got registration handy?" I pulled my wallet, fishing for the card. But Karen swooped in. "Don't show him anything. They'll just make excuses." "Excuses?" Sarah's voice cracked. "That's our car." "It's a hazard," Karen said. "You don't get special treatment because your child was ill." Sarah's face tightened. "Compassion isn't special treatment. It's being human." Rick exhaled. "Look, I don't like towing people from their own driveways. Can you back it up a foot?" "Not allowed," Karen snapped. "The process is active. Hook it." Her command echoed down the street. Several neighbors exchanged looks. Phones lifted higher. Rick hesitated. "I need a clear work order. I don't want to eat liability if this goes sideways." "It won't," Karen said. "I've got authority." But her voice had a slight quaver, one only visible to those close. Sarah stepped forward. "If you're really going to drag my car, at least explain why the HOA has more power than the owners of the house." Karen shoved her phone between them. "Because rules matter. Because otherwise this neighborhood would look like chaos. Cars on lawns, trash cans out all week, children dodging bumpers. Do you want that?" Sarah kept her voice low, steady. "I want you to stop bullying us." That word, bullying, hung in the air. Neighbors murmured. Karen's jaw locked. "You don't know the first thing about responsibility," she said coldly. "Some of us actually care how this place looks." Rick tapped his clipboard. "Look, ma'am, Karen, right? I can't just yank cars based on binders and opinions. Liability's on me if this gets contested." "Then hook it quickly before they complicate things further," Karen pressed, stepping toward the sedan. I shifted between her and the car. You're not putting hands on it. I don't need your permission, she hissed. This neighborhood isn't a democracy. It's an association. Rick raised both palms. Hey, let's calm down before somebody calls the cops. Already did, Karen said triumphantly. Board protocol requires police notification when residents interfere. Perfect, I muttered. Because I'd like to ask them where your authority ends. Karen smirked. They'll back me. They always do. The murmurs grew louder. Mrs. Turner held her toddler closer. Mr. Patel shook his head, whispering into his phone. One of the skateboard teens muttered, "Man, this is insane." Sarah whispered to me, "She's going too far. What if he really tows it?" I squeezed her hand. He won't. Look at him, he's not sure. Rick crouched to inspect the front bumper. His flashlight flicked across the VIN plate near the windshield. He jotted notes on his clipboard. Karen hovered over him, phone recording. Make sure you get the entire number. Accuracy matters in court. Court. Sarah repeated. Over 6 inches of bumper? Karen ignored her. Document thoroughly. The HOA defends its decisions vigorously. Rick sighed. Ma'am, if this winds up in small claims, I'm not standing alone. He looked at me. You got insurance on this vehicle? Yes, I said. Fully covered. Then I'll need to cross-check before I move it. Karen threw up her hands. Why are you stalling? Just do your job. I am, he said flatly. And my job means making sure I don't haul away something I shouldn't. He leaned closer to the VIN, squinting. His brow furrowed. He rubbed the plate clean with a rag, looked again. His posture shifted, suddenly rigid. What? Karen demanded. What's the delay? Rick didn't answer right away. He kept staring at the number, then flipped through a laminated sheet tucked in his clipboard pocket. His lips moved silently, comparing digits. What's wrong? I asked. Nothing, he said quickly, but his tone betrayed him. He looked at me again, longer this time. Karen jabbed a finger toward the bumper. If you're too squeamish, I'll call a different company. Wilson's is supposed to be reliable. Rick stood slowly, eyes still on the VIN. I need to make a call before I do anything else. Karen's face reddened. Absolutely not. This car is in violation. Hook it now. Rick shook his head. Something's off here. This VIN, it matches something I've seen before. I just want confirmation. Confirmation? Sarah asked. What do you mean? He pressed his lips together. Ma'am, I can't say yet. Karen stamped her foot like a child. You're wasting time. Tow it before they manipulate you. I'm not towing a thing until I know what I'm looking at, Rick said firmly. The tension surged. Neighbors leaned forward. Phones hovered inches higher. Karen's certainty cracked for the first time, her cheeks blotching red. She flipped pages in her binder as if paperwork could override reality. Rick turned slightly away from her, thumb already dialing a number on his cell. His other hand held the clipboard against his chest protectively. Sarah whispered, Why does he look scared? I stared at Rick, who walked a few steps toward his truck, voice low into the phone. Karen's voice rose, shrill. Driver, you are under contract. I demand you fulfill your duty now. But Rick didn't turn. His free hand covered his mouth as he spoke into the phone, eyes flicking back to our car like it had transformed into something else entirely. The crowd hushed, waiting. Sarah squeezed my arm. What's he seeing? And then, for the first time since he arrived, Rick's face showed genuine alarm. Rick turned his back to Karen, his phone pressed tight against his ear, shoulders squared as if bracing for impact. His voice carried low, but the quiet street amplified every syllable. Yeah, it's Wilson's, he murmured. Got a VIN here, need to cross-check. Numbers match something. No, I'm serious. He paced toward the tow truck, gaze flicking to our car again and again. Karen stomped after him. You don't need to call anyone. You're delaying enforcement. He raised a hand, palm out. Ma'am, give me 2 minutes. Sarah whispered to me, Why does it look like he's nervous? I shook my head. I don't know. But something's wrong. Karen pivoted toward the neighbors, her voice pitched high and sharp. This is what happens when rules aren't respected. The whole street suffers. Imagine if everyone decided to block sidewalks. Anarchy. Mrs. Turner, still rocking her toddler, muttered, It's not anarchy, it's 6 inches. Karen shot her a glare. Children trip. Lawsuits happen. That's why we enforce. Sarah folded her arms. You mean harass? Before Karen could retort, Rick ended his call and returned, face pale under the flashing beacons. He didn't look at Karen first. He looked at me. I need to double-check this VIN with paperwork, he said, holding the clipboard tight. You got the registration, sir? I pulled it from my wallet, handed it over. He studied the card, then the plate on the windshield, then back again. His lips pressed into a thin line. Karen snapped, "Is it valid or not? Hook it already?" Rick ignored her, speaking to Sarah and me. "This car, who exactly does it belong to?" Sarah frowned. "It's ours. Bought it last year. Registered in my name, financed under both of us." Rick exhaled slowly. "That's what I figured, but the VIN, it's showing up flagged. Tied to something bigger." Karen laughed, shrill and cutting. "Bigger? Don't be ridiculous. They're just residents. Ordinary. No one important." Rick's eyes darted toward her. "Lady, this isn't about importance. It's about ownership records. And the record here doesn't just say your names. It links to a state fleet database." A hush swept through the crowd. Phones tilted forward to capture his words. "What does that mean?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "It means I'm not moving this car until I know exactly what I'm dealing with," Rick said firmly. Karen threw up her hands. "A clerical error. Obviously. They're trying to manipulate you. State Fleet? Please. This is a suburban driveway, not a government garage." Rick shook his head. "Errors don't usually lock my system. This one did. That's why I called." Sarah stepped forward. "So, are you saying the car is registered to the state?" Rick hesitated. "I'm saying it's linked, which could mean lease, assignment, or something else." Karen barked, "Nonsense. Don't let them confuse you." But her voice carried a thread of unease now, thin and fraying. From the corner, Mr. Patel called out, "If the VIN's flagged, maybe you shouldn't touch it." "Exactly," Rick said. "If I hook this and it turns out to be official property, I could lose my license. Or worse." Karen whipped around. "Don't listen to him. He's covering for them. They probably fake documents. People do that." Sarah's cheeks flushed. "You think we forged a car title to trick the HOA? Karen, that's insane." "Nothing is insane when people are desperate," Karen shot back. "Some folks will stoop low to avoid fines." Rick's jaw tightened. "Lady, I've been towing for 20 years. I know fake plates. This isn't one." He pulled his phone again, this time dialing a different number. His knuckles were white around the device. Karen tried to snatch his clipboard. "You're overcomplicating things. Just hook it." Rick jerked back. "Touch this again and I'm walking off the job." The crowd murmured louder. Neighbors edged closer, drawn by the scent of conflict. Someone whispered, "Is this being streamed?" Another replied, "Already live on Facebook." Sarah grabbed my hand. Her palm was clammy. "What's happening? Why is our car tied to the state?" I shook my head, though I already had a hunch. My brother-in-law worked for the state motor pool, and he'd helped us source a car at a discount auction. I'd never thought much of it, but maybe that connection meant the title still bore deeper links. Rick finished his second call, then turned slowly. His eyes landed on Karen, who stood vibrating with indignation. "I can't tow this," he said flatly. "It's flagged as state property, tied to the governor's protective fleet." The words dropped like bricks on concrete. The crowd gasped in unison. Phones lifted higher. Sarah's mouth fell open. Karen's face went sheet white. "That's absurd. They're lying. This is a conspiracy." Rick shook his head again. "Conspiracies don't lock my system and trigger escalation calls." Sarah swallowed hard. "So, are you saying this car belongs to the governor?" Rick didn't answer. He just said, "I need police here before I touch another thing." Karen pounced. "Exactly. I already called them. They'll sort this out." "Good," Rick said grimly. "Because I'm not putting a hook on that car until law enforcement tells me to." Karen's voice wavered. "They won't. Because this is nonsense." But her hands clutched her binder too tightly, the plastic crinkling. Ethan banged on the front window, calling, "Mom? Dad? What's happening?" Sarah waved faintly, but her face was pale. "Stay inside, sweetheart," she mouthed. The sound of distant sirens sliced through the air, faint but growing. Karen's eyes gleamed like she'd won. "Hear that? That's order arriving. They'll back me." Rick didn't flinch. He stood with his clipboard tucked under his arm, eyes locked on the silver sedan as though it had turned into evidence in a federal case. Neighbors whispered, speculating, "Governor's fleet? State car? How did they get that?" I squeezed Sarah's hand tighter. "This is spiraling fast." The sirens swelled louder. Blue and red lights flickered at the far end of the street, painting the cul-de-sac in stuttering color. Sarah whispered, "What if this gets worse?" And then the patrol cars swung into view, slowing as they approached our house. The sirens cut out as two police cruisers rolled to a stop at the end of the cul-de-sac. Blue and red light washed over the houses, flashing across neighbors' windows like a warning. Officers stepped out, one tall and broad-shouldered, the other younger, carrying a notepad. The crowd instinctively stepped back, forming a semicircle that left our driveway exposed like a stage. Karen straightened her cardigan, plastering on a confident smile. "Officers," she called, binder clutched like scripture. "Perfect timing. This is an active violation, and the residents are interfering with enforcement." The older officer, badge reading Sergeant Miller, raised a hand. "Let's slow down." "Who placed the call?" "I did," Karen said quickly, stepping forward. "As HOA enforcement chair, I observed a vehicle blocking the sidewalk. I initiated proper tow protocol, but the owners are attempting to obstruct." Sergeant Miller's eyes swept the scene. The tow truck with its beacons, Rick clutching his clipboard, Sarah tense beside me, neighbors watching with phones lifted. He nodded once, then turned to Rick. "You the contractor?" "Yes, sir," Rick said. "Wilson's Towing. Called by her." He jerked his chin toward Karen. "But I've got a complication." "Explain," the younger officer said, pen poised. Rick held up the clipboard. "I ran the VIN. It's flagged. Tied to the state fleet, maybe higher. I'm not touching it until I know who really owns it." Gasps rippled through the neighbors. Someone whispered, "He said it again, Governor's fleet." Karen snapped, "That's a lie. He's confused by clerical errors. This is their personal car, plain and simple. They're trying to dodge accountability." Sergeant Miller frowned. "Sir, ma'am?" He looked at me and Sarah. "Do you have proof of ownership?" Sarah pulled the registration from her pocket where Rick had handed it back. Her hands trembled as she held it out. "Here. It's in my name. We bought it last year." The younger officer scanned the card, then passed it to Miller. "Looks valid," he said softly. Miller studied it, then looked at Rick. "So what exactly flagged in your system?" Rick scratched his beard. "VIN popped as state fleet property. My dispatch confirmed, said it's tied to Governor's Protective Services. That's why I called you. I'm not risking my license." Karen barked a sharp laugh. "Protective Services? Oh please. These two? They're not connected to anyone. They're middle-class nobodies. Ask anyone here." Her dismissal hung in the air. Neighbors shifted uncomfortably. Mrs. Turner spoke up. "Karen, that doesn't make sense. Why would he make that up?" "Because they're manipulating him." Karen snapped. "They've always thought rules don't apply to them." Sergeant Miller cut in. "Ma'am, enough. We'll sort facts from accusations." Karen's lips thinned, but she held her ground. Miller turned back to us. "How did you acquire this vehicle?" I cleared my throat. "Through a state auction. My brother-in-law works for the motor pool. He helped us find a good deal. Maybe the paperwork still connects to the fleet." Sarah added, "We didn't think it mattered. We paid fair and square." Miller nodded slowly. "That would explain the link." He handed the registration back. "But it also means this vehicle is still recognized as state property until full title clearance processes. That complicates things." Karen jumped on it. "See? Complications. Which is exactly why it must be removed. Liability for the neighborhood." "No," Miller said firmly. "That means it's outside your authority entirely." The words hit like a hammer. Neighbors murmured. Phones zoomed closer. Karen's face flushed deep crimson. "What do you mean, outside our authority?" "It's a violation." Miller leveled his gaze. "HOA bylaws don't supersede state property status. If this vehicle is flagged to the governor's office, the association has zero jurisdiction. None." Rick folded his arms, relief washing across his features. "Told you. I'm not towing it." Karen shook her head wildly. No, no, no. That can't be right. You're all being played. They planted this to embarrass me." The younger officer scribbled quickly. "Ma'am, it looks like you initiated an unlawful tow on state-linked property." "That's impossible." Karen cried. "I was protecting children. Sidewalk safety. Everyone saw." But the crowd wasn't backing her. Mr. Patel called out, "This went too far, Karen. It was 6 inches." Another voice added, "You don't drag the governor into this. That's on you." Karen spun, desperation flashing in her eyes. "You all wanted consistency. I'm consistent." Miller spoke evenly. "Consistency without judgment isn't leadership. It's harassment." Karen's breath hitched. For a moment her mask cracked. Then she rallied, jabbing a finger at me. You set me up, didn't you? You planted this car here, knowing it would make me look bad. I shook my head slowly. We parked our car in our driveway. That's all. Her voice rose shrill again. You've been undermining me for months. Hosting barbecues, handing out cookies at Halloween, pretending you're friendlier than me. But you don't care about this neighborhood like I do. The neighbors recoiled. A few muttered, she's lost it. One phone camera zoomed tight on her reddened face. Sergeant Miller gestured toward his cruiser. Ma'am, let's step aside. Karen clutched her binder tighter. I'm not going anywhere. This is my duty. The younger officer approached slowly. If you refuse to comply, we may need to detain you until we clarify ownership records. Karen's jaw dropped. Detain me? For doing my job. You overstepped, Miller said. There are consequences. Karen trembled, torn between defiance and fear. She opened her binder, flipping frantically through laminated pages as though rules could shield her from reality. Sarah whispered to me, Is this really happening? I squeezed her hand. Looks like it. The neighborhood was silent except for the faint hum of engines and the buzz of beacons. The tension coiled tighter with every second. Rick shifted uneasily, muttering, Never seen anything like this. Karen snapped the binder shut. Fine. Call who you want. I'll explain everything. Miller signaled the younger officer. Radio it in. We need confirmation from state security about this VIN. The younger cop lifted his radio, speaking into it. Dispatch, request immediate verification. Governor's fleet, possible HOA dispute involving flagged vehicle. Need confirmation. Static crackled. Then a voice responded, Copy. Hold scene. State security en route. Sarah's fingers dug into my palm. State security? Karen's knees seemed to wobble. No, that can't be. This was supposed to be simple. She turned in circles, looking at the crowd, at the cars, at the officers. You're all making a fool of me. Sergeant Miller stepped closer, calm but firm. Ma'am, step aside now. Karen's eyes darted wildly, sweat beading at her temple. She clutched the binder tighter, her last shield. And then the low growl of another engine approached from the far end of the street. Black SUV, tinted windows, government plates glinting in the light. The black SUV crawled to a stop behind the cruisers, engine idling low and steady, the sound carrying more authority than the flashing beacons. Its tinted windows reflected the gawking faces of neighbors, their phones recording every second. The SUV's government plates caught the light, clear, unmistakable. A ripple of whispers moved through the crowd like wind through leaves. Karen's binder nearly slipped from her grip. No, she muttered. This isn't possible. The rear door opened with deliberate slowness. A man stepped out, mid-40s, sharp suit under an open jacket, earpiece coiled against his neck. His posture was calm, but the weight of his presence shifted the entire street. He scanned the scene, tow truck, officers, neighbors, us, and his eyes landed on the silver sedan. Sergeant Miller straightened instinctively. Afternoon, he said, tone respectful. We've got a flagged VIN tied to your office. The man nodded once. That's correct. He pulled a tablet from inside his jacket and tapped quickly. Vehicle 3-1-7 Alpha. Governor's protective pool. Where's the owner? My chest tightened. Sarah squeezed my hand. That's us, I said cautiously. We bought it through state auction last year. The man's gaze softened slightly. That explains the dual record. The fleet database hasn't fully cleared. But make no mistake, until it does, this car carries protective designation. He looked at Karen. Which means it is absolutely off-limits to civilian enforcement. Gasp spread. The phones caught every word. Karen's face contorted. No, they're lying. They staged this. You're all colluding to humiliate me. The agent's eyes narrowed. Ma'am, your actions triggered a security alert. We monitor fleet VINs. When this tow request hit, alarms went up the chain. That's why I'm here. Karen staggered back a step, binder pressed to her chest like armor. Alarms? Over a car bumper? Over unauthorized attempts to seize state flag property, the agent corrected evenly. He turned to Rick. Driver, did you hook it? Rick shook his head vigorously. No, sir. Soon as I saw the flag, I stopped. I called dispatch. I wasn't about to touch it. Good call, the agent said. You're clear. He scanned the neighbors, then focused back on Karen. Who initiated the tow? Karen's lips trembled. I'm HOA enforcement. I protect the community. That's my duty. By exceeding your jurisdiction? The agent asked. His voice wasn't raised, but it cut like steel. You escalated a civil parking matter into a state security incident. The crowd murmured louder. Phones zoomed in. Mrs. Turner whispered, "She's finished." Karen shook her head wildly. "No. You don't understand. They always break rules. Everyone wanted me to be consistent. I did what was right." Sergeant Miller stepped closer. Karen stopped talking. But she didn't. Her voice rose, shrill with desperation. "This is all their fault. They bought some special car to trap me. They set me up so I'd look like the villain." Sarah's voice finally cut through, quiet but sharp. "We parked in our own driveway. That's all. You turned it into this." Karen whirled on her, eyes blazing. "You knew. You knew this car was special and you used it against me." Sarah's voice cracked. "We didn't know. And even if we did, why would you think threatening to tow our car in front of our kid was right?" For the first time, Karen faltered. Her binder slid from her grip and hit the pavement with a dull slap. The papers inside fluttered like wounded birds. She bent to grab them, but her hands shook too badly. The agent's voice carried over the silence. "Ma'am, you interfered with state property. That's a federal offense. We need to document this." Karen's knees buckled slightly. "No. I was just doing my job." The younger officer spoke into his radio again. "Dispatch, confirm. Local HOA initiated unlawful tow, now escalated to state level. Requesting guidance. Static then, copy. State security will advise. Hold subject on scene." Neighbors exchanged looks. A couple whispered, "She's going to be arrested." Another muttered, "About time." Karen's face drained of color. Her eyes darted toward her house, then back to the crowd recording her every move. She whispered, "You're all against me, every one of you?" The agent ignored her, turning back to me and Sarah. "You'll need to visit DMV this week to finalize the title clearance. Until then, your car is effectively protected. Keep it parked. Any issues, call this number." He handed me a card. The embossed seal shimmered in the flashing lights. I nodded, throat tight. "Thank you." Sarah took the card carefully like it might dissolve. "We didn't mean for this. We just wanted to park our car." The agent's expression softened again. "You're fine. None of this is your fault." Then his eyes cut back to Karen, hardening. "But her behavior, reckless." Karen whispered, "Reckless? I was defending the community." Rick muttered, "Lady, you almost cost me my license." Sergeant Miller put a hand on Karen's shoulder. "Ma'am, step back. Now." She shrugged it off violently. "Don't touch me. You don't get it. They've been undermining me for months. I'm the only one holding this place together." Her voice cracked on the last word. Her hands flailed helplessly. Neighbors recorded closer, capturing her unraveling in high definition. And then, one voice from the back, "Karen, give it up." It was Mr. Patel. "Calm, steady. You went too far." Karen's eyes filled with something raw, anger, humiliation, fear. She opened her mouth to scream, but the sound never came. Instead, she dropped onto the curb, binder papers scattered around her like fallen leaves. She buried her face in her hands. The younger officer stepped forward, cautious. "Ma'am, please remain seated until state security advises." The agent tapped his tablet again. "They'll want a statement." He glanced at Miller. "Better keep her here." Karen rocked slightly, whispering to herself. The words didn't make sense, fragments about duty and betrayal and neighbors turning against her. The crowd whispered too, but differently now, less angry, more stunned. This was no longer HOA drama. This was something else entirely. Ethan's small voice carried faintly through the window. "Mom? Dad?" Sarah's eyes welled. "He's watching all of this." I rubbed her back. "We'll explain later." But before I could say more, the agent's radio crackled again. "State security en route. 85 minutes." The neighbors gasped. Cameras tilted higher. Even the teenagers whispered, "This is gonna go viral." Karen lifted her head just enough for us to see her eyes, wild, red-rimmed. "They'll regret this," she muttered. "All of them." The words hung heavy in the air as the low rumble of another vehicle approached from beyond the cul-de-sac, growing louder by the second. The low growl of engines swelled until a pair of dark SUVs rounded the corner, larger than the first, their grills gleaming beneath the fading sun. They rolled to a stop nose to nose with the tow truck, boxing the scene like a perimeter. Doors opened in near unison. Men and women in dark jackets stepped out, each with discreet earpieces. No raised voices, no dramatic weapons. Just quiet, deliberate control that shifted the atmosphere instantly. Neighbors who'd crept close retreated a step, phones still raised but hands trembling. This was no longer HOA theater. This was official. One of the agents, tall and severe, approached the first suited man who'd arrived earlier. They exchanged clipped words we couldn't hear. Then the taller agent turned to Sergeant Miller. "We're assuming jurisdiction. Everyone remain in place." Karen staggered to her feet from the curb, her binder papers still scattered. Her voice cracked. "This is insane. It's 6 inches of bumper." The agent's eyes cut to her, flat as glass. "Ma'am, your actions triggered a state security alert. That escalates this beyond parking bylaws." Karen jabbed a finger toward us. "They provoked it. They've been trying to humiliate me for years. They knew what kind of car that was. They planted it here to trap me." The crowd murmured. Mrs. Turner hugged her toddler tighter. Mr. Patel shook his head slowly. Sarah's voice came, soft but steady. "We parked in our own driveway. That's all." The agent ignored Karen's protests and gestured to another officer. "Collect her statement. Record everything." A female agent stepped forward with a small recorder. "Ma'am, we need your full name, your role, and why you initiated this tow." Karen's face burned crimson. "I don't have to answer to you. I answer to the board. They'll back me." But her words faltered when she glanced toward the HOA board members at the back of the crowd. 3 of them stood rigid, hands clasped, eyes cast down, unwilling to meet hers. Rick, the tow driver, muttered, "Board ain't backing anyone now." Karen's voice pitched higher. "You cowards. You all wanted me to enforce. You begged me to be consistent." The agent's voice remained calm. "Consistency doesn't give you jurisdiction. You attempted to seize a state-designated vehicle. That's obstruction at best, tampering at worst." Gasps rippled again. Neighbors looked at each other, shocked. Phones angled closer, desperate not to miss a word. Karen shook her head violently, hair falling loose from its neat bun. "You can't say that. I'm not a criminal. I'm a volunteer. I give up my time to keep this place livable." The female agent lowered the recorder slightly. "Then help us understand. Why escalate to a tow instead of simply issuing a notice?" Karen stammered. Because they break rules. And no one else stops them. I had to show strength. Otherwise people stop respecting the HOA. Strength. Sarah's voice trembled now, though with anger. "You scared our child. You tried to humiliate us in front of everyone. That isn't strength. That's cruelty." The crowd murmured louder. Some nodded. A few neighbors actually lowered their phones, the humanity of Sarah's words outweighing the spectacle. Karen froze, caught between the circle of cameras and the agent's unblinking stares. Sergeant Miller cleared his throat. "State or not, she overstepped. What's the next step here?" The tall agent folded his arms. "We're reviewing whether this constitutes interference. At minimum, she'll be cited. Possibly more, depending on intent." Karen shrieked. "Cited? For doing my job." The agent didn't flinch. "For exceeding it." Rick finally exhaled loudly, like he'd been holding his breath the whole time. "Glad I didn't hook it. Never seen anything like this." Karen spun toward him, eyes blazing. "You were supposed to follow my order." He lifted his clipboard like a shield. "I follow contracts, not vendettas." The crowd chuckled nervously. Karen flinched at the sound. Another agent stepped forward, handing the lead a printout. He scanned it quickly, then addressed us. "Mr. and Mrs. Hayes?" I nodded. "Yes. Your vehicle remains protected under transitional status. You're advised to finalize the title transfer at DMV immediately. Until then, any attempt to tow or seize it will trigger another alert. Keep this documentation with you." He handed me a sealed envelope. Sarah held it carefully, almost reverently. "Thank you." Karen's voice broke. "You can't give them special treatment. It's not fair." The lead agent faced her squarely. "Fairness doesn't include harassment. You turned a minor issue into a federal matter." Her knees buckled again, but this time no one moved to steady her. Even the neighbors who'd once tolerated her patrol stayed back, recording silently. The younger officer whispered something to Sergeant Miller, who nodded. Then Miller stepped forward. "Ma'am, for your own sake, I suggest you stop talking. You're only digging deeper." Karen's eyes darted everywhere, toward her house, the board members, the crowd. Finally they landed on me. Her voice dropped low, almost a growl. "You think you've won. But this isn't over." Sarah flinched at the venom in her tone. I met her glare calmly. "We never wanted a fight. Just to be left alone." The female agent clicked off the recorder. We've got enough. She turned to the lead. Recommendation. He nodded once. Detain her until we finish the report. Release at our discretion. Karen gasped. Detain? You can't. I'm not a criminal. I'm a neighbor. Sergeant Miller sighed. And right now you're interfering with state investigation. The crowd collectively inhaled. Phones tilted higher. Two agents stepped closer, calm but firm. Karen backed away, nearly tripping on her scattered binder papers. No. Don't you touch me. This is wrong. The lead agent said nothing, just gestured once. The two stepped in. Karen's scream tore through the cul-de-sac, raw and furious. You'll regret this. All of you. And then, silence as she was gently but firmly guided toward the waiting SUV. The neighbors stood frozen, recording every second, while Ethan's small face pressed harder against the front window, wide-eyed and frightened. Block 6, visual prompt. The agents guided Karen toward the second SUV, their movements calm but firm. She twisted in their grip, shrieking, I'm not a criminal. This is my neighborhood. Her voice cracked, echoing off the manicured houses. Neighbors stayed rooted in place, some lowering their phones out of unease, others holding them higher, eager to capture her fall from power. The lead agent spoke quietly into his earpiece. Subject secured. Begin documentation. Sergeant Miller exhaled, shoulders sagging. He turned toward us, his face gentler now. Sorry you had to go through this in your own driveway. Sarah shook her head, her voice trembling. We just wanted to park our car. That's all. Karen thrashed again, her eyes wild as she locked onto the HOA board members standing awkwardly near the curb. Tell them, she screamed. Tell them you asked me to be strict. You begged me to keep order. The three board members exchanged nervous glances. Finally, one of them, Mr. Clarkson, the HOA president, cleared his throat. His voice wavered. Karen, we never authorized this. We asked for fairness, not towing neighbors from their driveways. Karen's scream fractured into a sob. You cowards. You all loved me when I handed out fines. You wanted me to be the bad guy so you could stay clean. Her words stung because they rang true. The neighbors shifted uncomfortably, realizing they had let Karen be their shield until she burned herself alive in the role. The lead agent approached the board members. We'll need your statements too. Especially yours, he said, nodding at Clarkson. If there was encouragement to overstep, it will be investigated. Clarkson blanched. We'll cooperate. Behind them, Karen collapsed to her knees, agent still steadying her. I gave this place everything, she sobbed. And this is how you repay me? The younger officer scribbled in his notepad, his pen scratching quickly. Sergeant Miller muttered, seen a lot in this job but never an HOA mess turning into state security. Rick the tow driver leaned against his truck, wiping sweat from his forehead. I told you. Liability nightmare. Glad I stayed out. He caught my eye and gave a small nod of respect. Sorry you had to be the test case. I nodded back, still numb. Thanks for not touching it. Karen lifted her head, face streaked with tears. Her eyes fixed on Sarah again. This is all your fault. You and your smug smiles. You turned the whole neighborhood against me. Sarah's voice shook, but she didn't look away. You did that yourself. The crowd murmured in agreement. A neighbor called out, we just wanted peace, Karen. Another added, you went too far this time. Karen wailed, I was protecting you. From chaos. From people like them who don't care about rules. The agent crouched slightly, his voice low but firm. Ma'am, enough. This isn't about rules anymore. This is about boundaries. And you crossed them. Karen sobbed harder, binder papers still scattered around her like debris from a storm. The younger officer stepped toward the crowd. Everyone, thank you for staying back. We'll finish statements soon. Please don't interfere while we process. But neighbors weren't leaving. They whispered, filmed, and some even live-streamed, their faces lit by phone screens. The spectacle was too captivating. Mr. Patel finally spoke, his voice calm but carrying. We all let this happen. We didn't check her. We let her push and push until she thought she had the right to do anything. The words hung heavy. Neighbors shifted guiltily. Karen's sobs turned into bitter laughter. Now you admit it. You made me your sword, and now you want to bury me. Sergeant Miller looked at Clarkson. You're the HOA president, right? Maybe you should speak to your community now before this blows up even bigger. Clarkson swallowed hard, stepped forward, and raised his hands. Everyone, please. This isn't what we stand for. Our rules are meant to keep things fair, not to divide us. Karen, she let things get personal. But we, the board, will review everything. We'll. The crowd groaned. Someone shouted, "Too late." Another added, "You let her run wild for years." Clarkson faltered, shrinking under the weight of his neighbor's anger. "We'll do better," he said weakly. Karen's laugh was jagged. "Lies. All of it." An agent spoke quietly to Miller. "We're transporting her for evaluation. Not an arrest yet, but she'll be documented." Karen heard. She jerked upright, eyes blazing. "Not an arrest yet? That means you know I'm right. You're afraid of me." The female agent stepped closer, steady and unshaken. "We're not afraid, ma'am. We're making sure you don't hurt yourself, or anyone else." Karen trembled, torn between defiance and despair. She whispered, "I just wanted order." Sarah, soft but audible, answered, "Order without kindness is just control." The silence that followed was thick. Even the neighbors put their phones down for a moment. The agents guided Karen into the SUV. The door shut with a final, muffled thud. The sound felt like a chapter closing. But the tension didn't fade. The crowd turned toward the board members, eyes sharp, questions unspoken but heavy. Clarkson tried to retreat, but the looks pinned him in place. Rick muttered again, "This whole place needs a reset." I looked at Sarah, who still clutched the envelope with the state seal. Her knuckles were white. "We didn't ask for this," she whispered. "No," I said. "But now it's here." The agent approached us again. "We'll need your statement too. Everything you saw, everything she said. It matters." Sarah nodded numbly. "Of course." Ethan tapped the window harder now, calling, "Mom? Dad? Are you okay?" Sarah turned, tears in her eyes, and waved. "We're okay, sweetheart." The crowd slowly began to thin, neighbors whispering to each other, some still filming, others shaking their heads. But the weight lingered, thick as humidity before a storm. Karen was gone from sight, but her shadow hung over us all. And then Sergeant Miller's radio crackled again. "Be advised." Media picked up chatter. "News vans inbound." The words froze the air. Sarah looked at me in alarm. "News? Here?" Miller gave a weary nod. "When state cars get flagged in a cul-de-sac, it doesn't stay quiet for long." The neighbors gasped, realizing their sleepy community was about to become a headline. The first van arrived before the agents finished taping off the driveway. Its headlights swept across the cul-de-sac, followed by the whir of a satellite dish rising from the roof. The side door slid open and a cameraman jumped out, tripod in hand. A reporter in a navy blazer followed, adjusting her microphone as she walked briskly toward the crowd. "Channel 7 News," she called. "Who witnessed the tow attempt?" Neighbors scattered into clusters, some eager to talk, others retreating toward their porches. Phones that had been live streaming now flipped to record the reporters instead. Karen's SUV hadn't left yet. She sat inside, flanked by two agents. Her pale face was visible only when the flashing lights caught the window. She slammed a palm against the glass, but no one opened the door. The reporter approached Sergeant Miller first. "Officer, can you confirm why state security is present in a residential HOA dispute?" Miller kept his tone even. "What I can confirm is that a vehicle was mistakenly targeted for towing. The VIN triggered a state alert. That's all we're releasing." "That's all?" the reporter pressed. "Neighbors are saying the car belongs to the governor." Miller's jaw flexed. "We're not confirming that." But the damage was done. The rumor had already bloomed like wildfire. Mrs. Turner stepped forward, toddler on her hip, speaking to the camera. "It was crazy. Karen from the HOA tried to tow their car, said it was blocking the sidewalk. Next thing, tow driver says it's the governor's. Then the police came, then state agents. I've never seen anything like it." The reporter's eyes lit. "And how did the neighborhood react?" Turner's voice hardened. "We've lived under her rules for years. People scared of fines, photos, citations. Tonight it went too far. She embarrassed us all." Behind her, Mr. Patel added, "We asked for safety, not harassment. Karen made herself the sheriff. Now look." The camera panned across the crowd, capturing nods and murmurs. The narrative was forming right there. HOA gone rogue, neighborhood rising against its enforcer. Sarah and I tried to stay near the car, but the reporter spotted us. She marched over, microphone raised. "Are you the vehicle owners?" Sarah froze. Her grip on the envelope with the state seal tightened. I stepped forward, shielding her slightly. "We are. But we're not commenting." "Sir," she pressed, "what's it like having the governor's car parked in your driveway? Did you know it was state property?" My stomach twisted. One wrong word and tomorrow's headlines would twist it further. We bought it at auction. That's all. We had no idea about any flags. Sarah whispered sharply, "We shouldn't talk." The agent nearby nodded subtly, backing her up. "No more questions," he told the reporter. But she already had what she needed. Our faces, our voices, the image of us standing in front of the silver sedan while red and blue lights flashed behind. Another news van arrived, then another. Within minutes, the street looked like a press conference, microphones sprouting like weeds, neighbors jostling for camera time. The board members hovered nervously at the back, trying not to be noticed. Clarkson finally stepped forward, sweat shining on his forehead. "The HOA board will issue a statement tomorrow," he stammered. We never intended for this to escalate." Reporters swarmed him, voices overlapping. "Did you authorize the tow? Was Karen acting alone? Will she remain on the board?" Clarkson's words tangled. We support enforcement but not excessive enforcement. This was an isolated incident." The crowd booed softly. Someone shouted, "You let her do this for years." Cameras caught it all. Inside the SUV, Karen's face pressed to the glass, eyes blazing. Her mouth moved in furious words no one could hear. The image looked damning, like a disgraced official being transported. Sarah tugged my sleeve. "Ethan's still watching. We need to get him away from the window." I nodded. "I'll go." But before I moved, the reporter turned back to me. "Sir, do you feel safe in this neighborhood after tonight?" I hesitated. The world's gaze felt unbearable, cameras hungry for a soundbite. Finally I said softly, "Safe isn't about rules. It's about neighbors." Tonight proved the difference. The microphones caught it. The crowd hushed. For one fragile moment, my words hung heavier than Karen's shouts. The lead agent gestured sharply. "Media back 50 feet. Now." Agents pushed the crowd gently but firmly, creating a buffer around the car. The tape stretched wider, pushing us and Sarah inside the circle. Reporters fumed but obeyed. Behind the yellow tape, neighbors debated in loud whispers. Some defended Karen, she meant well. Others condemned her, she was power-hungry. The split was real, raw, and captured live on half a dozen feeds. Sarah leaned against me, whispering, "This is going to haunt the neighborhood for years." I rubbed her shoulder. "Or it'll finally change it." As the agents prepared to transport Karen, another voice cut through the noise, a neighbor none of us expected. It was Mrs. Jenkins, the oldest resident on the block, who rarely spoke at meetings. She hobbled forward, leaning on her cane, and shouted past the cameras. "Karen, you forgot what it means to be a neighbor." Her voice cracked but carried. "We built this street together. You turned it into a battlefield." The crowd went silent. Cameras swung toward her. Even Karen froze in the SUV, her eyes wide at the rebuke. The power of the words lingered, simple and undeniable. And then the lead agent's radio buzzed. "Transport approved. Move her now." Doors slammed, engines roared, and the SUVs began to roll slowly away, Karen's silhouette shrinking behind tinted glass. Neighbors craned their necks, watching the convoy disappear into the night. Phones lowered at last, replaced by stunned silence. But silence couldn't last. Reporters began filing their segments live, words like governor's car, HOA gone too far, state agents intervened, flying into microphones. Sarah whispered, "Tomorrow this won't just be a story on our street. It'll be everywhere." I nodded grimly. And nothing in this neighborhood will ever be the same. The SUVs carrying Karen disappeared around the corner, their taillights shrinking into the night. The red and blue strobes faded, but the echo of her shouts lingered in the cul-de-sac. For a moment, silence reigned, broken only by the hum of news vans and the soft rustle of neighbors whispering. Then the dam burst. Reporters turned their microphones back toward the residents, eager for soundbites. Neighbors, emboldened by Karen's absence, stepped forward with stories they had swallowed for years. "She fined me $200 because my trash can was visible for an hour," one woman said, voice trembling with anger. "I was at the hospital with my mom. She didn't care. She took pictures of my kids' bikes leaning on the porch," another neighbor added. "Said it was clutter. Who does that?" The reporters scribbled furiously, their cameramen sweeping across faces, capturing outrage, tears, and disbelief. Sarah gripped my arm tightly. "It's turning into a trial on the street." I nodded. She ruled by fear. "Now they're unloading everything." At the edge of the crowd, the HOA board members huddled, faces pale. Clarkson tried to speak again, but his words were drowned out by jeers. "You let her do it," someone shouted. "You knew." One board member, Ms. Ellis, finally broke. Her voice cracked through the noise. We didn't stop her because it was easier. We let her be the enforcer while we kept our hands clean. That's on us. The admission stunned the crowd. Cameras zoomed in. Clarkson looked like he'd been punched in the gut. He tried to whisper to Ellis, but she pulled away, shaking her head. Sergeant Miller, still on scene, sighed. This is above your pay grade now, he muttered to Clarkson. You'd better get counsel before you make another statement. Clarkson wiped sweat from his forehead. We'll suspend her from the board effective immediately. The crowd groaned. Suspend? Someone barked. She needs to be banned. Another shouted, dissolve the board. The neighborhood was fracturing right there under the glare of news cameras. Sarah's eyes darted to Ethan, who was still at the window, wide-eyed. He shouldn't see this, she whispered. Go get him inside, I said. She nodded and hurried to the door, scooping Ethan into her arms. His small voice carried out, why is everyone yelling, Mom? She pressed him close. Because the grown-ups forgot how to be kind. The lead agent approached me quietly. This story's out. You'll see headlines by morning. If reporters press, stick to the facts. You bought the car legitimately. Nothing more. I nodded. What happens to her? He adjusted his earpiece. She'll be processed. Likely charged with interference. Beyond that, depends on her record. But tonight, her reputation's already gone. He wasn't wrong. Even without formal charges, the image of Karen screaming inside a state SUV would play on repeat across every screen. The reporters pivoted back toward the HOA board. Did you enable her? Will you resign? How will you repair community trust? Clarkson stammered again, but Ellis spoke over him. We owe everyone here an apology. We failed. This neighborhood deserves leadership, not intimidation. The crowd applauded softly, an unusual sound in a place accustomed to silence under Karen's rule. For the first time, Ellis's words pierced through the noise. Rick, the tow driver, leaned against his truck, shaking his head. I'm heading out before my face ends up on TV all week. He gave me a nod. Take care of that car. It's hotter than you think. Thanks for standing your ground, I said. Would have cost me my business otherwise, he muttered, climbing back into his cab. The tow truck rumbled to life and pulled away, leaving only the press vans and patrol cars. The crowd began to thin. Parents tugged children home. Some neighbors lingered, gossip heavy in the air. But the electricity that had fueled the standoff was gone, replaced by a weary, unsettled quiet. Sarah returned with Ethan, who clung to her shoulder. His small voice asked, Is the mean lady gone? Yes, Sarah whispered, kissing his hair. She's gone. But even as she said it, we both knew Karen's shadow would linger. Reporters cornered Clarkson one last time. Will the governor's office comment? He waved them off. No comment. His eyes were glassy, his career as HOA president already in ashes. The agents began to pack up, SUVs pulling away one by one. Only the patrol cars remained, Sergeant Miller finishing notes under the harsh glow of a street lamp. I walked up to him. Will they actually charge her? Miller shrugged. That's for prosecutors to decide. But tonight? She lost the neighborhood. Sometimes that's worse than any court. Sarah joined me, Ethan's small arms still around her neck. What happens to us now? She asked softly. Miller looked at us with something like sympathy. You'll have peace for a while. Nobody's going to challenge you after this. But peace felt fragile. Every whisper, every camera flash, reminded me we'd been unwilling participants in a story bigger than ourselves. Neighbors began drifting back indoors. Lights flickered out behind curtains. The cul-de-sac, once buzzing with chaos, slowly dimmed into quiet again. Sarah leaned against me, exhausted. Do you think she'll come back? I hesitated. Not the same way. Not after tonight. But even as I spoke, I could picture her eyes burning through the SUV window, the words she had spat, "You'll regret this." The night was cooling, but a chill settled over me. This wasn't finished. Not yet. By morning, the cul-de-sac was quiet again, as though nothing had happened. The binder papers were gone, the flashing lights had faded, and the news vans had packed up in the early hours. But the silence felt heavy, the kind that comes after a storm when everyone knows the landscape has changed. Sarah and I sat at the kitchen table, coffee cooling in our mugs, Ethan building with blocks on the floor. Our phones buzzed nonstop. Links, screenshots, messages from coworkers and family. Is this really your street? You're on the news. Governor's car? The video clips were everywhere. Karen screaming as agents led her away, neighbors confessing years of resentment, me saying quietly into a microphone, "Safe isn't about rules. It's about neighbors." That line was replayed in every broadcast. Sarah rubbed her temples. "We didn't ask for this. We just wanted to park our car." I nodded, staring at the headlines on my phone. HOA Karen triggers state security alert over driveway tow. Neighborhood revolts after rogue HOA power grab. The footage had gone viral overnight. By noon, an email arrived from the HOA board. Clarkson had resigned. Ellis was acting president. A special meeting would be held to address trust and leadership moving forward. Sarah read it aloud, then looked at me. "Do you think people will actually show up?" "They'll have to," I said. "Nobody can ignore this anymore." That evening the meeting was packed. Folding chairs lined the community center, neighbors shoulder to shoulder. Reporters weren't allowed inside, but their vans idled outside, hungry for more. Ellis stood at the front, hands clasped around a stack of notes. Her voice shook at first but steadied as she spoke. "Last night was a reckoning. Karen overstepped, but we allowed it by looking the other way. That ends now. No more harassment disguised as enforcement. From this day we rebuild trust." The crowd clapped softly. It wasn't triumphant, it was weary, cautious hope. One neighbor stood. "What about Karen?" Ellis's face tightened. "She's been removed from the board permanently. As for her legal situation, that's in the hands of state authorities." A murmur ran through the room. Relief mixed with curiosity about what punishment might come. Another neighbor asked, "What about the Hayes family? They've been through enough." All eyes turned to us. Sarah shifted uncomfortably, Ethan asleep in her lap. I cleared my throat. "We don't want special treatment. We just want to live here in peace like everyone else." Silence followed, then someone called out, "You've got it." Others nodded. For once, the consensus was real. When the meeting ended, Alice approached quietly. "Thank you for speaking up. Your restraint last night, it set the tone. If you'd shouted back, it might have turned violent." Sarah gave a tired smile. "We were too stunned to shout." Alice sighed. "Sometimes stunned honesty is what people need to hear." The board promised reforms. Warnings before fines, a grievance committee, no unilateral enforcement. Small steps, but they mattered. In the days that followed, the neighborhood changed. Kids rode bikes freely without Karen's shadow. Neighbors chatted longer at mailboxes. There was laughter where tension used to live. But the memory of the night remained, captured forever in viral clips replayed online. And Karen? Reports trickled in. She'd been cited for interference, released under conditions, and moved in with her sister 2 towns over. Some said she planned to fight back legally. Others whispered she might never show her face here again. Either way, her power was gone. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the rooftops, I stood in the driveway beside the silver sedan. Its paint glowed orange in the last light. Sarah came out, wrapping her arms around herself. "Do you ever think," she asked, "what would have happened if the car wasn't flagged?" I nodded slowly. "Yeah. She would have humiliated us. Maybe towed it. Maybe worse. But we got lucky." Sarah shook her head gently. "Not just luck. We stood our ground. We watched Ethan chase fireflies across the yard, his laughter ringing clear. For the first time in months, the street felt like a place to breathe again." I thought back to Karen's last words, "You'll regret this." Maybe she still believed them. Maybe she always would. But looking at Sarah and Ethan, at the neighbors who now waved instead of scowled, regret was the farthest thing from my mind. Outro/reflection for audience. Stories like this happen in neighborhoods everywhere. Sometimes it's about a car, a fence, or a trash can, but underneath it's always about power. When people forget that rules are meant to serve neighbors, not control them, chaos follows. If you've ever faced someone abusing authority, you know how exhausting it feels. But fairness and calm will always win out over fear and intimidation. And if you want more stories where ordinary families stand up, where bullies get checked, and where justice finally arrives, make sure you subscribe. Because here the truth always finds a way.